live.
Emancipate yourself from rental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for our rental slavery, 'cause none of them against stop the time. How long shall they kill our prospects while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to ditch the rental book.
Good afternoon.
Hello. I'm Roger Lewis from Real Estate Land and Developments Limited.
Yep, that's me, Roger Lewis, Real Estate Land and Developments. I'm on the top left-hand side. We've got David in the middle there from Contrast Design, who made that jingle we just played, and then we've got Ranjan in the bottom left-hand corner. Hi Ranjan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Right,
Hi, Ranjan.
great.
Hi, Ranjan.
Hi, David.
So, what I wanted to do today was have a conversation with Ranjan about this Moduloft presentation which I've put together, and the presentation is the COP26 presentation, and it's entitled Carbon Accounting, Finance and First Time Buyers, and it's a response to the Green Horizons talk which Mark Carney gave on the 10th of November, which people who follow the Grub Street Journal blog or the RealRLD blog will have seen various responses that we put up to that. Now, Ranjan and I went through this booklet earlier, the first bit of which introduces Moduloft, which is our development brand for affordable housing. So we're going to flick through the brochure, and then Ranjan is going to pose questions as we go along, and David may chip in to clarify various points as we go through. So, RLD Limited is a marketing company which I established back in 1990, but relaunched at the beginning of this year. And we launched a investment fund for private equity to pursue development of affordable housing schemes, and we specifically purposed Moduloft with addressing the first time buyers market, and the introductory video that just played the sting just then explains what we call the reluctant 10%ers, what Chloe Timberley calls generation rent, and this booklet is a response to the carbon accounting aspects of wider geopolitical and political economy agendas introduced by Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 coming out of the United Nations, which inform the green capital responses which Mark Carney was talking about in the Green New Horizons. Now, development is a huge producer and a huge user of energy, and therefore, as carbon is a proxy for energy use, also a large emitter of carbon dioxide, and measuring energy usage via carbon dioxide, it's a very good proxy. There are other good ones too, but COP26 is particularly concerned with responses to what's called the climate crisis, and the accounting rules and the finance landscape that's being put in place take on board those issues. The issues which this document addresses are Chapter 7 of Agenda 21, which relates to the built environment, and also Sustainable Development Goal number 17, I think it is, which also we'll be getting to later in the brochure. Now, Moduloft uses a production, a supply chain delivery method developed by AECOM, a large management contractors, and Roger Stirk Harbour and Partners. And modular construction, which is off-site, minimises wastage. It uses less materials in a Buckminster Fuller way to do more with less. Buckminster Fuller's Bucky Fullmeister's concept of tensegrity, which is basically doing more with less. And this process allows us both to deliver more cheaply, but also in terms of carbon emissions. And we wanted to use these new materials, new methods of construction to build affordable homes for owner-occupiers. And one of our unique selling points over our competitors using similar techniques, who are really purposing them towards what's called the build-to-rent sector. So it's an enduring question, is whether or not the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Goals in advanced post-industrial societies such as United Kingdom, United States, actually take into account the fact that home owner occupation and home owning democracy has been a tenet of our sort of political landscape for many years now, and it's not something which I want to relinquish anytime soon for my own children, and certainly talking to business associates of mine with children coming up wanting to purchase homes, we want them to have the same opportunities that we had. So that's really what informs the development of our product, i.e. Moduloft. So the booklet then goes on to show some schemes we've been interested in, some designed schemes which AECOM and Roger Stirk have done, and that's the corporate end of what we're doing. And then these graphics here show the supply chain and explains various things about the process which AECOM and Roger Stirk have put forward. These pictures here on the left are of Place Ladywell. This system was developed in conjunction with Lewisham Council for affordable or sustainable and also pop-up buildings on sites that were being repurposed down the line. And this is actually social housing in Lewisham. These are various loft designs and concepts which we, within the envelope we can do with these are just some of the things that people can do with loft space. And this is a mock-up of a proposed app for people to specify their lofts and their affordable homes delivered by effectively the ranges that we've come up with. What can you remember what Irving's terms were, David? It's
style.
The style range,
and I think it was just loft. I think for the loft height.
That's right. So the style range has regular ceiling heights, and the loft range and the loft range plus has higher ceiling heights to get into loft type accommodation. So this app will allow people to put in their specifications, find locations where we're sourcing land to build these things, and effectively, because it's a production line, an assembly line that we put together, plugging into the supply chain, we are approaching this from the point of view of large-scale industrial manufacturer similar to Henry Ford with the Model T Ford. The idea being that the people building and producing our product are able to afford to buy the product. So Post-Fordism is a kind of a sociological and economic term that people that do that stuff tend to talk about, but I don't see why post-Fordism should rule out continuing home-owning democracy. So that's really our basis, a free market solution. I'm a capitalist. I'm an unabashed, unashamed capitalist. I think capitalism can work, and the finance aspects of financialised capitalism have fallen down on the job, in my opinion. And at COP26, we want to make our presentation quite clearly, unabashedly. We are capitalists, and we want the finance industry to provide appropriate financial products for our customers, who are the reluctant 10%ers. And the rest of this booklet then goes on to discuss some of these matters. Now, Dr. Adrian Wrigley produced this article in The Ecologist magazine in August 2008. It was first appeared, I think, in 2007. And there's one paragraph in particular I'd just like to read, and this is just as true now as it was then. And the late Dr. Adrian Wrigley said, "We have a crisis of affordability and allocation. People are borrowing 8 times their income to get on the housing ladder, yet there are 700,000 derelict houses, 500,000 second homes, and hundreds of thousands of pensioners' homes with at least 3 bedrooms spare. The overheated Spanish housing market shows that rapid building programs do not cure price bubbles." So there's a finance aspect to this. Another paper which Dr. Adrian Wrigley produced and presented to the House of Commons Treasury Committee in 2011 builds on these points, and what he says about the single land value tax is that he makes the assumption in making his presentations that the politicians in the House of Commons wish to make policy in the public interest rather than just in narrow financial interests. And what Adrian does is he actually shows how the money token, or what we know as money, currency, credit, debt, all of those things are produced against a political landscape. And when Mark Carney talks about accounting for carbon in buildings, it's very important for those of us in the building industry to advocate for our customer base to make sure that sufficient credit is allocated to homeowner occupation at this end of the housing market, i.e. the reluctant 10%ers. And so there's an ongoing discussion with this. One point I'd like to add to that is that Bjorn Lomborg, in his film Cool It, based on his book The Skeptical Environmentalist, the very last scene is he's being called to give evidence at a Senate committee, I think it is, and one of the senators asks him or says to him, "Oh, well, we can do all of these things." He said, "You know, you come here, Denmark's maybe a small country, but the US is this big country, and so we don't have to choose between these options, we can do them all." And Bjorn Lomborg sort of says, "Well, granted, yes, Denmark is a small country, and I accept all you say about the United States, but the thing I would ask you is, you know, you've had 10 years to do stuff and you haven't done it. So, you know, if you haven't done it in the last 10 years, why should I believe what you're saying now?" And that's a challenging question which Bjorn posed back then. If you watch that film, you'll see him ask the question. 10 years later, they still haven't done anything. Again, political platitudes don't put heads on pillows. And this is what it's one of my sort of slogans, if you like. When I say I want heads on pillows and bums on seats, I want to build these places for our customers, and we call on the finance magnates, the international banks, etc., and the local banking frameworks to make the finance available. and that's part of the Moduloft business plan. This is a Moduloft presentation, and Moduloft will be making its presentation to COP26, so I make no apologies for plugging Moduloft, which you'll find more about on the RLD blog. Lots of links in this document. So that's Adrian Wrigley, the ecologist article. And then we start getting into the meat of some of the articles I've been publishing over the past few days and trailered at the weekend. So the titles of these various articles are self-explanatory. This title, Debt Growth, Money Supply and House Prices, Rationing the Right to Shelter, and Mark Carney's own talk was the cartography of post-COVID-19 green growth. And he asks a number of questions in his talk and refers to various working groups who've been at this a long time, talking about accounting for carbon and how that needs to be taken into account, showing that people are acting responsibly within the frameworks to achieve these goals. And this paper wants to drill down into that and actually talk about the nuts and bolts, one, of the construction industry, and how things can be done more efficiently, but also responding to customers. So the point I would make is that this is evidence-based property development, and we call for evidence-based policy making, not policy-based evidence making, which when people tend to talk in political slogans and what have you, they tend to forget about what the object of all this exercise is. Build back better. Build back better for who is our question, and the who in our case are the reluctant 10%ers. We want to build back better for owner occupiers who want to be stakeholders in a home owning democracy, as opposed to acting as renters in a rent-seeking banana republic is how I sort of tend to label that one. So as you go through the booklet, there are links and other booklets that drill down into different aspects of the question of the elements of resources, labour, and tackles the question of whether there's a resource crisis or whether there's a finance crisis, and are we building back better to make society better or to repair a broken financial system? It's a fair question, and a question I think that COP26 should be examining. So if we click through, the first two booklets are based around Mark Carney's cartography of the post-COVID-19, which it doesn't talk the pandemic and the climate crisis are two issues that seem to concern a lot of people, but the actual lived reality of people in the UK, people in the United States, people in Australia, people in the advanced or post-industrial type places, it's quite evident when you read the Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 that it's a kind of a one-size-fits-all, and the global south is not the global north, and it requires a little bit more thought in terms of, you know, these ideas of transitioning and all the rest of it. We should be levelling up, as Boris Johnson is fond of saying, levelling up people in the global south, as opposed to levelling down and condemning people to rental slavery on my presentation, or some sort of serfdom, or do as you're told and shut up kind of authoritarian mercantilism, if you like, as opposed to looking for a meritocracy and a home-owning democracy, which is what I advocate and what Moduloft is all about. So have we got any questions at this stage, Ranjan? Hello?
No. Following that, you're basically saying that there's going to be the COP26 coming up is providing homes that are affordable, but at the same time is the wider system permit that.
Right. So, because I'm aware that I've spoken for 21 minutes, and well, you know me, I'll gas on for ad nauseum. Hopefully, it's been of some interest up to this point, and shall I just continue flicking through to get to some of the more technical aspects further in the booklet?
Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. So. This one is titled Build Back Better, Double Dip into Carbon Credit, Double Dipping, and a Moduloft inquiry. And how I've sort of set this booklet up is to ask some of the awkward questions that perhaps aren't being asked by the self-congratulatory, if you like, higher-ups in all of this. What this part of the booklet looks at is the where we've come through in all of this, from the Nixon shock, the oil shock, the idea of a world reserve currency in the dollar, that we're not linked to gold anymore, but in some explanations of all of this, and my own view is that global currency creation being centralized and linked to carbon, as opposed to, say, a hard physical metal like gold or silver, which is kind of old hat, if you like. But what we're really talking about is credit and debt-based money. And so there's quite a lot in the different schools of thought on how money works within a modern economy. And there are different schools of thought on that, this booklet of various levels challenges various modes of thought on that, and there are a whole bunch of booklets which I've been putting together over the past 9 months, really, since I started putting things up on Yumpu, starting off with our Loft Miles idea, which started an inquiry into mortgage origination, availability of finance for self-builders, etc. Looking at the providing mortgage finance to the self-employed, for instance, is an age-old and fairly intractable problem that mortgage companies have had. So then it goes on to make this point, that following the second lockdown and the huge quantitative easing that's been going on, it seems that they've ostensibly been or had the result of concentrating corporate wealth and control, and Main Street has kind of been left out. But also other people that are being left out of it are reluctant 10%ers, and we would want to address that. And this is a little quip that Charles de Gaulle made: "La réforme, oui, le chien lit, non," which basically, if you put an apostrophe or a line between dog and lit, it becomes shit the bed, apparently. There's an article on that in which is kind of a crude way of saying let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And de Gaulle actually started off the ball rolling on the Nixon shot by repatriating French gold, which started about 1965, which is quite an interesting historical fact. So then, after the 2008 financial crisis, there were various approaches to dealing with the reserve currency being the dollar. Famously, at the time of the Nixon shock, Connolly, who was the Secretary to the Treasury in the US at that point, said that it's our currency but your problem. But that whole thing is playing out at the moment, and a lot of this COP26 carbon pricing and UN policy coming out, it is really about whether you have a unipolar currency system or a bipolar or multilateral currency type system, and that whole question begs the question of, can you really have a can you have a single path approach, or does it really have to be a parallel path? Because obviously the idea of convergence, or the idea of homogenizing a world economy, which is complex, is perhaps a pipe dream. And so when we see people like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum giving voice to his ideas that he's developed over many years, we hear a lot about people referring to the science and will be guided by the science. A lot of in-group biases come out from organisations, in my opinion, like the World Economic Forum, because the people who are in charge are used to being surrounded by yes men that blow smoke up their arse, and I don't blow smoke up anybody's arse. I mean, I've got questions and I'm going to ask them, and I'm going to advocate for our reluctant 10%ers.
Roger, speaking of question, just to
clarify,
this COP26
meeting coming up, I think, in Glasgow next year, maybe January or something like that. You're
getting ready
to
provide housing,
which is basically green.
And
though people might consider this COP26 as being all about the last chance to save the world, climate change, this type of things has been presented,
there's going to be a
set of financial arrangements that people are going to be, the central banks and normal banks are going to be expected to stick to. This is the Great Reset.
That's right.
And it's going to affect planning. So with the green